staying with us. You know how Monday mornings are. We're starting the week and we're having our news review. We're joined by Suleiman Abrahima, Executive Director of Media Foundation for West Africa. He joins us to review the papers that we have here this morning. I have the Daily Graphic, Ghanaian Times, Daily Guide, the Finder newspaper, the Ghanaian Publisher, among others. We'll sift through. Some of the issues are repeated, and so we may have to gloss over certain newspapers. Not intentional, but we'll make the most of the situation. Suleimana, a very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us. You'd have to unmute, Suleimana.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, loud and clear.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning. How was your weekend?
Well, quite well. Enduring the economic crash, but we are on.
We're on. Anyway, so time now for us to dig into the papers and quite a number of issues to discuss. Before we get into the papers, the usual, I'll run a few thoughts by you. There is that Deputy Director General at the Ghana Education Service, I'm sure you recall, whose contract has been renewed for a second time. I'll just get you the details of that together with his name. And some people are wondering whether there are only a select few who can, remain at post ad infinitum, basically forever. There's been a lot of talk about that in respect of whether these are the only people who know how to do the work. There's also this matter, I don't know whether you've seen it yet. An assemblyman demolishes a bridge linking two communities simply because the person who did it, did not seek the right permissions. Now, they were using wooden planks. At a point, this person invests his own money, time, resources to build a concrete one. Of course, we cannot overlook the fact that the right measures must be followed, but is the move to break it all down? These are some thoughts I'd like to run by you right before we get into the review proper. Any thoughts you have on them? I'm looking for that letter from the Ministry of Education, which was confirmed. Yes, there it is. So the Office of the President confirms the extension of service as Deputy Director General, Management Services of the Ghana Education Service by Dr. Yao Osei Educhum, who is the Minister of Education, and it has to do with that Deputy Director General. But what is your take? So his name is Mr. Anthony Boateng. It's generated a lot of conversation on social media. People saying the old guard, and again, we're not subscribing to ageism here, but the old guard is not moving for new people to come in. What is your take on that?
Well, I think people who are complaining are right because in the public or civil service, there are individuals who certainly would be qualified to assume the role that the person in question is occupying. And sometimes you don't also want to create a situation that undermines the morale of those who feel qualified to be appointed. It also then introduces the whole thing about partisanship and politics into the civil service, because people would feel, well, because this person is well connected to the political system, that is why they are here forever. I don't think it's a good practice, and the earlier we moved away from it, the better. Indeed, if some people have certain special skills for which, an institution thinks, well, we still need it, the people can exit and can be engaged either on the basis of consultancy, and as and when the services are needed, the person can be contracted. But to go on retirement and remain at post certainly undermines morale, work culture in institutions. And it is not the only place that we are seeing this.
But these are extensions. These are exactly what you're talking about, extensions. So it's been extended for a year for this person, and it's been extended by another year upon the request of Education Minister Yao Osei Educhum.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is that whatever special skills that this individual possesses,
right,
the person can be engaged whilst on retirement once in a while to come offer this service, or we want to prepare this document and we think this person has the skills to prepare this document. We contract him for a 2 months or a 1 month service contract. That's a service contract as a consultant. Then you are paid and then that's it until perhaps something else comes up and your services are needed. But not that you remain at post, you continue to give instructions to persons who are qualified to have occupied your position, but because you have, literally refused, or you've been given that benefit and privilege of continuing to be in service whilst when you have retired, it certainly undermines work ethic, it undermines, institutional performance and all of that. The only person who benefits, or what the beneficiary remains, the one who has gotten that extension of contract to remain at post. So yes, some individuals may sometimes have special skills that are needed, but those people can be engaged on consultancy basis, on fee-paying basis and all of that, but not as somebody who is in full-time service.
And about that assemblyman who takes, so to speak, the law into his own hands and says, why construct a bridge when we would have done something else, something that hadn't been done? There were only planks, which meant that the people were not very safe crossing that. Of course, we do not know whether this person who took it upon himself to do so went through the right processes. But what would demolition be the first step you would take in such an instance?
I wouldn't think so. Once it was done and it was serving the community, even if the assemblyman thought that, look, this ought to have been consulted before it was done, I don't think that the person just got up overnight and the problem was there just in a day and he or she decided to fix it. I suppose it is a problem that the people were facing for quite a while. And so even if the assembly member feels that he or she was not consulted, the right approach wouldn't be to say, I am demolishing it. But I got a sense, unless I'm wrong, that after the demolition, a concrete one has been constructed by the assemblyman. Is that right?
Well, I think it's rather the concrete one that was put up by this generous person that was, broken down. And now what do you see is it's been broken down. It's back to what it was before. In fact, now, if the information I have is the latest, there's nothing connecting, the two. And that is the problem, because initially there was the wooden structure. And this person comes to put the concrete structure and it's broken down. So that's it. So the concrete structure is rather what the citizen put up.
That's absolutely crazy. I think in that context, the person is not an assemblyman. He's actually a problem man for the community. And the earlier such a person is done away with as a representative of the people to whatever district assembly, the better for the people. I don't know what the motivations might be. Sometimes in the rural areas, the person who may have done this may be seen as an NDC man and the assembly member may be an MPP person. So the assembly member feels, he did this so that just to spite me and my party and the government.
Or maybe the assembly person, we're just conjecturing. Or maybe the person thinks, this is someone who might have an interest in taking over from me at some point in time, and why allow him to get all the plaudits, all the applause?
No, certainly. That's also a possibility. But
right.
That's the problem that we are in our country today, where values and morals don't count. What counts now is political connection and partisanship and so on and so forth. But I think that it has to be investigated so that it doesn't kill the spirit of people who want to do things for their community voluntarily, without any partisan interest or political interest, and so on and so forth. So it's a matter that we should all take interest in and really not leave it to the community to sort it out or leave it out to local media to be reporting it. I would take a keen interest in that and offer any support for bigger mainstream media that would be interested in investigating the matter.
All right. And even as we say all of this, let's also take note. You cannot just get up as a citizen and do anything. So you must seek the requisite permissions. That is also the other side of the conversation. But the Daily Graphic this morning, power back in Kroboland, economic activities picking up. And after being without electricity for 3 weeks, Kroboland in the eastern region now has power. This follows the implementation of a roadmap agreed upon by a committee made up of the Ministry of National Security, the political and traditional leaders of Kroboland, as well as the power supplier, the ECG. The committee was set up by the Ministry of Energy to resolve the issues between the ECG and the people of Kroboland that led to the power cut. Of course, there's been a lot of talk about the damage that the people allegedly caused to some of the equipment of the ECG. But now that power has been restored, what would you like to see going forward? In fact, last weekend, when power was initially restored, I think some of the equipment of the ECG was still in a poor state, so the lights went off again and then later had to be restored. But moving forward, what would you say should be the moves that are adopted to maintain some sanity as far as this situation is concerned, Suleimana?
Well, I never really got to understand the whole issue. What I was hearing was that, well, the people in the area are saying that they wouldn't pay bills for electricity that they consume on the basis of some historical agreement that was signed that entitles them to free electricity, which was, in my view, quite curious and something that certainly couldn't be supported. But I believe that in the midst of things, the engagement perhaps did not also go as it ought to have gone. These are individuals perhaps who are misinterpreting certain things and taking the wrong action. And so it was quite a pity that they had to endure what they went through. But I at some point didn't also see what the ECG could do, but to take the action that was taken. What is important is that now electricity has been restored, which is a great thing. And going forward, it's important that the community members are continuously engaged to sensitize them to appreciate why it's important that they cooperate for the electricity to be on. Because, I mean, the impact on them can be quite devastating in terms of medical hospitals that were medical facilities that were struggling, schools that were struggling, businesses that were struggling. Suddenly, the impact of that was certainly more devastating than whatever amounts that they were going to be paying for consuming electricity. It's just impossible to say that I want to have electricity without paying. I don't think that it can happen anywhere. And so they need to be engaged for them to understand why it's important that they continue to do their part of the bargain in terms of paying their bills whilst having electricity running.
And I think that is part of the roadmap as well. And we wish them well. Hopefully, some positive resolution will be brought to this matter. But in other stories, GIFEC obtains land for rural telecommunication. 2016 sites will move coverage to 95%. But two major stories I want us to take a quick look at. One on page 61, the other on page 13. Let's start with the story on page 13 of the Daily Graphic newspaper. And it says, "Do not glorify wealth from dubious sources." Togbe Afede says so. And the Agbogbomefia of Asogli, Togbe Afede the 14th, has urged Ghanaians to stop glorifying wealth from dubious sources. That, he said, would help significantly in the fight against corruption. Speaking at an anti-corruption forum at the forecourt of the Asogli Palace at Hobankwe as part of activities marking this year's Teza Yam Festival last Saturday, the Agbogbomefia said it was important for people to respect those who worked hard in dignity and not just because of a certain lifestyle. But to cap it all off, on the bit about his ex gratia, which he spurned, he turned away. Quote, he says, "I returned the ex gratia amount I was given not because I didn't need the money. In fact, at that particular time, I needed money very badly to meet various family obligations. But I truly believe that money was not deserved. Yes, I will reject ex gratia again if I have to, because our country is a very poor country. So anybody who sacrifices or who has offered to voluntarily work for this country must be very considerate. There has been talk, Sule, about scrapping these ex gratia packages and all of that. How do you react to the story?
Well, first of all, again to commend His Eminence the
Agbogbo of the Asogli State.
Toby Afede. There are people who speak about these issues of corruption and act the opposite. In his case, he even acted before what he is saying now. So he is clearly not saying something that he is not doing. And I wish that we had our chiefs behaving the way Toby is behaving. Because in our country today, part of the problem is the conduct of our chiefs. In fact, because of little things and meager things, sometimes you have chiefs fighting each other or chiefs making statements that are really untoward just because they want to gain favors from one party or the other. So it would have been great if we had our traditional leaders all embracing the conduct and attitude that Toby has shown. The other point is the very important message he sends for Ghanaians not to glorify people who have made it through dubious means. And in our country today, absolutely a lot of people are making it through dubious means. I have said that currently, given the system we are running, whether it is the MPP or it is the NDC, people seek power just to dupe this country. Because they come to power and all of a sudden, what they have is certainly unthinkable. Think about the ministers of this government today, the people who have gotten appointments in this government today, people that we knew, people that were friends, people that we worked together, and what they have within the last 5 or 6 years. And it is just unthinkable. The NDC out there in the opposition, a lot of them we know also profiteered from being in power. We know people who own multiple houses in East Legon, multiple lands across the city, just because they were in power and not because they did anything extraordinary in terms of work. And those are the people that Toby is saying we shouldn't glorify. We know people who are occupying leadership positions in their churches, not because they are doing anything righteous, not because they are the most, righteous people in the churches, but because they are the ones who are able to donate the most amounts when there are events organized and so on and so forth. The churches don't question, how do these people come by their money? And sometimes they even know that they get these monies through very dubious contracts with the state. And a lot has been revealed by the media in terms of these dubious contracts. And yet, our religious communities continue to honor these persons as elders and as leaders, and in the mosques, they are the persons who are glorified, and so on and so forth. It would take a lot of effort. But if we, as individuals, begin to send these messages as Toby is doing, maybe a time will come we would begin to get people doing the right things. In fact, when Toby returned the ex gratia, we had people like Paul Adomotri shamefully, for whatever reasons and for appeasing their political masters, denigrating Toby and saying all manner of things. I mean, if you have people like this who have no shame, who have no embarrassment, and will do anything to denigrate those who are doing the right things, then we are in trouble. But of course, I believe with people like Toby, there are certainly others like him, and we must encourage such people to speak up. We must encourage such people to do the right thing and serve as mentors, people that we can look up to,
right,
so that our country can become what we all want it to become.
On page 61 of the Daily Graphic, Education Ministry takes delivery of textbooks tomorrow. And the Ministry of Education will take delivery of 3,742,624 textbooks from the United States Agency for International Development, that is USAID, tomorrow. In all, 11,135 schools under the Ghana Accountability for Learning Outcomes Project, Gallup, will benefit from the distribution, which will include 1,214,347 primary 1 to 3 pupils. In addition, a publisher, Professor Kwam, has also distributed 275,000 books for classes 1 to 6, while 629,755 creative arts books for classes 1 to 3, and it goes on and on. The Minister of Education made this known at a press briefing in Accra last Friday and said more textbooks would be coming this week and would be sent to the schools. Finally, on technical and vocational education and training, the minister said $60 million had been secured under the Ghana Jobs and Skills Project as seed money for the Skills Development Fund. But this is the same minister who has also been under fire in recent times over those $2.5 million, $1.2 million, among others. Positive note on the textbooks, right? But how do you feel about the other end? Some of the accusations leveled against the Honorable Minister.
Well, yes, positive development, but that is also because of where we have been. We have all been through basic school, through JSS during our time, now JHS, and then senior high school, and all of that. Maybe because those days I was too young to follow what was in the media, but otherwise, when we were in school, we had textbooks for all subjects. To the extent that sometimes students could be given the books to take home to read, whether it is cultural studies, whether it is life skills, whether it is social studies, English, and so on and so forth. But we've gotten to the point where the fact that textbooks are going to be made available is even news. It's good to know that now textbooks are going to come. It's good to know that there's been an issue over textbooks, and so having them is news. We hopefully should get to the point where having something as basic as textbooks wouldn't be something that is a cause for celebration. On the issue of accusations, I really don't have a lot of facts to back whatever is happening. I would just urge that a lot more investigations are done so that we would get to know the details of all these accusations. And if there are merits, we take them on.
Just a quick one, very quick one. I just want your very quick reaction to this, Suleimana. Asamoah wants to play for the Black Stars. It's on the back page of the Daily Graphic. And Mohammed Ahmed Polo says, don't write Asamoah off. But many others have already written him off. They say he can't even run for 10 minutes, according to them. But the point is, what is your take? You love your soccer. What is your take?
Well, it's good to want to continue to sacrifice for your country, to continue to play any role that is possible for your country. So if Jan says, "Look, I want to come back to play for the Black Stars," I think it's a good thing. But of course, he has to justify his inclusion. So for all those who are saying he cannot run for 10 minutes, he cannot do this, he cannot do that, it's not as though we just get up one day and we say we have a match against this particular country at the World Cup, and so Jan, come and play. I believe there will be a lot of training sessions, a lot of practicals and so on. Let's get him on and see if he's able to justify himself. Why not? Why would we say that he wouldn't be able to play? The man thinks that he still has the energy to be able to help this country in terms of whatever skill and talents that God has given him. So I think let's give him the chance to justify his inclusion. And if it turns out that indeed he is the right person to play for Ghana, why not? I believe that if today Stephen Appiah says, I think I can still do better on the field, and so allow me to come back. Yes, come and justify yourself. It doesn't matter. The age and all of that certainly wouldn't matter. Let us encourage him to justify his inclusion. For maybe this will be the time that he will shine.
Well, let's take a quick look at the Ghanaian Times newspaper now. National Standardized Test. We know about them recently. I think the class 4 pupils had a taste of it. All schools to take part in 2023, Education Minister assures, will achieve SDG targets. That's according to President Akufo-Addo. That story on page 17. 3 granted 60,000 Ghana cedi bail for stealing ECG power. You see, this is what we're talking about. Stealing power. And delegation from Benin diaspora joins Soweto chiefs to mark Homowo. But on this bit about the national standardized test, the rollout has started. Like I said, in recent times, we got wind of the performances, regional performances. And it was shocking because some regions that you would think, like the Volta region, where education is seen widely said to be the cocoa of the people, they were at the very bottom. The minister, for example, says that in all, about 390,000 pupils from 14,883 public schools participated in the test. An analysis of the results showed that the Ahafo, Bono East and Bono regions emerged tops in the maiden test, which was limited to just primary 4 pupils. But moving forward, how do we make this an integral part of ensuring that we have quality right from the basic level moving forward? Is this going to ensure that?
Well, it sounds...
It appears we lost Mr. Bryma there just briefly. We'll try to reconnect with him and get his answers. Suleimana, I can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Sorry about that. I was saying that it sounds a good thing. For me, the challenge is that we seem to be playing too much with the education of our kids in this country. Today, it is this policy. The next day, it is that policy. Today, children will not write BEC. The next time, they will write BEC. Today, class 4 people will do this. The next time, they wouldn't do that. It is this curriculum, and the next day, it is that curriculum. I think we are playing too much politics and too much gimmicks with the future of our children. And the earlier we settled on doing the right things and avoiding the politics in it, the better for this country. I had so much confidence in the current education minister. In fact, I was among those who tweeted, to congratulate him when he took over and said great things about him, even though I haven't met him before. But it was all on the basis of what we noticed him to be when he was deputy minister. But on assumption of the ministerial position, I don't think my expectation has been met. It's all about, like I said, today is that policy, the next day is that policy. Textbooks are going to be printed locally. The next time you hear it is going to be printed, we hear this about this donation and so on and so forth. We need to be consistent and to be coherent about our policies around education. Otherwise, the future of this country will be doomed.
Linked to that, the Ghanaian publisher says, greedy, selfish enemies want my fall. That's according to Dr. Yao Osei Edichum, Education Minister. On the back page of the Ghanaian Times, I just had to sneak in that bit. Eto tips African teams in Qatar World Cup semis. He's very hopeful that our teams are going to fare very well, and some of them will make it into the semi-finals. Of course, he was also interacting over the weekend with my colleague, Gary Al Smith. If you missed that one, you can catch the details. But the Daily Guide newspaper, Allen approval rating high. The 2 stories I'll highlight. And we can't prosecute NAM1. That's according to the Yoko boss. So on the Allen bit, senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, Dr. Kobe Mensah, has said the massive turnout at the Health Walk for Trade and Industry Minister, Alan Kwejo Chemating, underscores a high favorability rating among the NPP-leaning voters. There's also the bit about not being able to prosecute NAM1, according to the Yoko boss. Quick thoughts?
Well, on the NAM1 prosecution, I've heard the Ministry of Finance make contradictory statements that no, that is not right. I don't know who is telling the truth at this stage. We need to go a bit into that. On the FPP race, Alan versus Baumia, is still a very dicey one. Certainly, the system appears to be to support Baumia. And Alan also has his supporters. We can only look forward to a very decent competition, and whoever emerges victorious, we continue to champion the things that would eventually get whoever becomes the leader of our country to do the right thing, whether it is Baumia, whether it is Alan or John Mahama or Kwabena Dufo or whoever it will end up being. For me, what is important is the person doing the right things, exhibiting acts of patriotism, exhibiting acts that would, build the future of this country for younger generations to come, and not what we are witnessing now, which certainly, if we're going to go on this path for the next 10 years, I think that Ghana is certainly going to be doomed. So we can look forward to a decent competition, and the rest will remain with we, the citizens, demanding the right things being done, and not just about making money through political connections.
Let's wrap the conversation, Suleimana, with these quick stories. Ghana's wealth exported for a pittance. Over 80% of exports are primary commodities, no value added. Pictured there some bars of gold as well as cocoa. That has been a problem that we've spoken about time and again, but it appears we're not doing anything to it. I was talking recently about the fact that we're now the world's number one yam exporter. But what are we doing? What value are we adding to it? Many people don't even know we are the world's number one exporter. Somehow we should have touted this so that we'd encourage yam production and all of that. I know of planting for food and jobs, but I don't see most people out there, if it weren't the fact that I were rehashing this, wouldn't even know that currently Ghana is the biggest exporter of yam. But the other story, CD's free fall, sharp inflation rise pushes policy rate to 22%. That's in economy at times. Quick reactions, and it's a wrap, Suleiman.
Well, I think that we've been good at talking and saying the nice things, particularly in the context of this government, saying all the nice things and doing little or doing the opposite. President Akufo-Addo in opposition talked about the need to move away from the Goggisberg economy, and then comes to power, and we are doing more of the Goggisberg economy, which has gotten us to where we are. It all comes down to the same points I make all the time in terms of leadership. A leader who is selfless, a leader who would want to see a better Ghana, a leader who is not thinking about today, but thinking about the future, a leader who would want to leave a legacy for which he or she will be remembered for decades to come. That is what we have lacked, and that is why we are where we are. It's really unfortunate, but a lot will also depend on we, the citizens, doing the right things, working hard, and seeking to make wealth through the right way.
Right.
Otherwise, we would remain where we are for a long time to come. And unfortunately, neighboring countries that we used to be better than are fast, perhaps on the move than we are. And very soon, it wouldn't be surprising to see some of these countries doing far better than we are doing, as we are seeing now in terms of the currencies of weaker nations, the Gambia, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and so on and so forth, really not being categorized the way ours has been categorized over the period as perhaps the weakest currency around the world.
Suleimana, thank you for your quick reflections and your thoughts on all these matters this morning. I wish you a beautiful week. I know we'll reconnect next Monday if God gives us life.
Thank you so much, and have a great week as well.
All right. Suleimana Brahima, Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. He joined us.